don't we invite our special guest in, who we're so thrilled to have, Rohit Chopra, former director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Let's get into it. Thank you so much for coming, Director Chopra, joining us in our coffee clutch. I have my
Thank
mug.
you. May I thank you too. I mean, you've been through a lot. I haven't seen you since you. Well, I remember years ago you asked me a question about ERISA that I could not answer, and I was really furious at you for doing that, and I haven't had a chance until this moment to just tell you how furious I was, how just kind of awful that was. Thank you.
You're welcome, and it's good to be here with you. I think that question was also really about how do we take on these big financial firms with so much power, whether it's people's retirement or people's mortgages or credit cards.
And
And
that
now
was you
you,
in college, right, Rohit? I mean,
I
that's
think
how long
so.
ago it
I
was.
think so.
And now you can answer that question. That was going to be my first question. You've been through, kind of a really a trial by fire, right now in terms of what happened to you at the start of the Trump administration. You've done by the way, you've done an extraordinary job. You were at the Federal Trade Commission. You directed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You deserve all our thanks for being an exemplary public servant. And I think I'm one of your biggest fans. But because we have such limited time, what is your answer to the question you almost asked me years ago about how do you take on the powers that be?
Well, I think we actually need our government to be a watchdog, not a lapdog. I think some of the biggest companies on the planet really think that the government is there to serve their interests rather than the interests of the rest of us. And I think you see all these agencies with acronyms, FTC, CFPB. It can sound like just a soup of agencies, but what we need each and every one of them doing is checking abuses of power in our lives. And that's exactly what the CFPB has tried to do. And I think that is part of the reason why some of the wealthiest and deep pocketed companies in the economy want to see it dead.
Well, we're talking about power, and some of the deep pocketed and biggest companies want to see it dead. And guess what? Trump wants to see it dead, and some people would say it's dead. So, what's the moral of the story? That you can't actually take on big companies?
No, it isn't dead because here's what we're going to see. And I think it's a big open question. On one hand, you see President Trump, he actually campaigned on capping credit card interest rates, on going after Jamie Dimon and Brian Moynihan for their banking practices. On the other hand, you see Elon Musk and others who want to defund the police that look after big tech and Wall Street. So this is a live fight, and it is something that we cannot be passive about. It is something we have to use our voices and our votes, no matter where we sit, Congress, state legislatures, or just as citizens, and make sure that we do something about it. We cannot live we're just surrendering to everything that occurs, and we have to actually act. So I'm really proud of what we did over these past several years at the FTC. We had a transformative chair in Lena Khan. I got to serve with her where we took on some of the biggest abuses online and in the brick and mortar world. And at the CFPB, we collected $9 billion around just in a couple years from repeat offenders in banking and in tech, and put that money back in people's pockets. So, Bob, I think it's a jump ball right now, and that's really what we've got to navigate through.
Heather, I want to give you a chance to get in here, but I want to get back to this jump ball. a metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, I just think the scale at which you worked. So I studied public health, and public health is about the many, not the few, right? And consumer protection. So you talked about the repeat offenders. You're talking about Wells Fargo and Bank of America and the things they have done to consumers, overcharging, secretly charging, taking advantage of people. I mean, the scale, I think the Americans need to understand the scale of what the CFPB works on. Can you talk to that a little bit more?
Well, every single payment that you tap your phone with to pay, or your card, or how your payments are processed on your student loan or your mortgage, how your interest is calculated on your account, that's subject to a set of rules. And we need to make sure that they're actually enforced. A few months ago, we actually sued Capital One for withholding, we allege, illegally billions of dollars of interest on people's savings accounts. There's a lot of people, older Americans, who their primary asset is in that savings account, especially if they don't own a home. We also obtained around $150 million for people who use the popular payment app Cash App. That's just in the past 8 weeks. And what you're seeing now, though, is a stop work order. All of the investigators, all of the examiners, inspectors of the CFPB have been told, stay home and do not perform any work task at all. That's basically telling the police who are patrolling to just go home and let's see what happens. And I think that that's just baiting real financial crime that will pick the pockets of people across the country.
But isn't it also illegal? I mean, you were given by Congress a term of office that ends in 2026. The CPFB is an entity that was set up by Congress. How can a president simply deliver a stop order and have everybody go home?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think that's what there's already been some lawsuits to kind of suss out, is all of this illegal? I also, Bob, think there's a bigger question. How is this efficient? You know, we hear a lot about efficiency and use of resources. And by the way, even during my time as director, we did actually cut a lot of contracts. We reassigned employees because needs change. But if you're offering buyouts to people who were already going to retire, or if you're cutting all the new employees, many of whom are bringing new skills that are desperately needed to police artificial intelligence and so much more, how is that actually a good use of resources? And so I think it's really important. We need to get these employees back to work at these agencies and start prosecuting again those who break the law, because the only beneficiaries of that are the companies that break the law. Every single day, I think we averaged over $4 million in refunds back to people. Why is it efficient to cut that work? The return on investment was huge for the taxpayer.
It's not. It not only is it not efficient, but it's just the opposite. I mean, when you take 7,000 people, you lay them off from the IRS, just as the IRS is approaching tax season, when you need people to collect the taxes. I mean, it's absurd. But let me read you. This is a quote from one of your favorite people, one of your admirers. His name is Jamie Dimon. He is the chair and CEO, both, of the largest bank in the United States, one of the largest banks in the world. And Jamie Dimon says, I think this guy, he was referring to you, Chopra, or whatever his name is, was just an arrogant, and then he says some awful things, and he calls you a son of a bitch. Now, the fact that you got that kind of a rise out of Jamie Dimon indicates to me that you have been doing the job that you should be doing. And but I have to admit, I am just beyond furious that Jamie Dimon got his way, that you're no longer there, that there's a stop order, that Lena Khan is no longer doing what she was doing at the Federal Trade Commission, that all of this, of that Wall Street, the CFPB was put in place after the Wall Street crisis. It was, it was part of Dodd-Frank, and Wall Street is back crowing about, how much power it has and doing whatever it can to consumers, and we're going to have another Wall Street crisis, aren't we?
Well, first of all, let me say I don't take any threats or, expletive-laden criticisms personally. I get it. It's an emotional time for a number of Wall Street executives. They actually themselves are fearful about what is going on, and behind closed doors, they're also wondering, wait a second, do we actually want lawlessness? Or do they just want the ability for themselves to rip off people and not get caught? I mean, this is really what's challenging right now. America actually benefits when we have some laws that get enforced. We benefit when there are rules of the road that set a level playing field. So I really do worry that if we don't have any law enforcement, we can see a race to the bottom. We'll have, instead of people competing on great customer service or competitive rates, we'll see people competing on how they can arbitrage or violate the law without any consequences. And I just think that's really insulting to all of the businesses, that the CFPB regulated that are actually following the law, as opposed to some of the biggest ones that violated the law repeatedly and just felt like that was the cost of doing business. I just think that's fundamentally wrong.
Now, one of the rules you mentioned that you all had serious success with was capping overdraft fees, right? And Republicans are now going to consider overturning that. Where does that stand?
Well, here's what we did. We looked up the history of overdraft fees, and here's what we found. In 1969, the Federal Reserve created a carve-out from the lending law. The lending laws are pretty straightforward. You got to come clean about what the interest rate you're charging when you're extending a loan. But at the time, many people were sending checks through the postal service. Sometimes mail got delayed. Sometimes your paycheck did not arrive on time. And occasionally, there was a mismatch between what your check was for and what you had in the account. But fast forward to today, most of those overdraft fees are for smaller purchases you make with your debit card. And some banks have turned that into a multi-billion-dollar bonanza. So a lot of consumers have found that their payments were actually reordered so that they would get 3 overdraft fees or 4 instead of 1. They found that even if they just overdrew by 35 cents, they would have a $35 fee. So the CFPB said, let's actually look to the law to what it says. So we said, you know what? You really should disclose the interest rate, just like you do with a credit card. And you got to offer the same type of information you do with other loans. And if you don't want to do that, we're going to make the exception to that much narrower, that you can only charge really the costs that it takes you to process that, or a reasonable fee. And we calculated it, and it was about $5. So of course, a bank can still make money. They can still charge an interest rate, but they got to disclose it. And what's interesting is one of the first actions we're seeing is an endorsement from the opposition here to the rule to overturn it. And the result will be billions of more dollars in fees that are not competitively priced, in many cases that consumers don't even expect or even want.
Let me just ask a more basic question here. If consumers are getting shafted and are likely to get even more shafted because this rule is not in place, because the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is not really able to do its job, and we have more and more people who are angry at the system, the kind of anger that led to the election twice of Donald Trump. Where is this heading? Where are we going? What's the logical ending point of taking all the guardrails off American business and welcoming a race to the bottom?
Well, like I said, it's a jump ball right now. And I really think that work by the CFPB, whether it was on junk fees or medical bills or what we've done to protect people's payments when they're using digital payment apps. I think it's basically the type of work that everyone in America agrees with. And the research shows that no matter what your party affiliation, this is what they want to see their government do. And the only places that it's really controversial is with Wall Street and its lobbyists. So it really depends. Are we going to just live in an era of noise where we just close our ears to what is going on? Or will we actually try and offer up what is the alternatives and the policies we need to pursue to lower the costs of getting by? You know, a lot of people who are affected by these fees, they don't have room in their monthly budgets for a few $100s in junk fees. It's what puts them on a treadmill of debt and really hurts their lives. And I get it. For some people, it just may not be a big deal, but for others, it really is. So I think, Bob, Heather, that there is a lot of skepticism about big tech, about Wall Street, and other concentrated power and the regulations that they impose on all of us. A lot of the rules that we deal with are not actually written by government. They're written by companies who set the terms and conditions and put it in fine print that we click through when we agree to something. And that's what I think people are sick and tired of. And we need to make sure that that power is in check.
Well, amen to you.
That was motivational. Bob and I are constantly looking to feel good these days, and I feel like you have delivered that. I feel empowered. That is true.
I do too. And I want Jamie Dimon to watch this, and I would love him to join us. Maybe you can join us too, and answer the question, how in the world is JP Morgan Chase or any big bank going to make money over the next 5 to 10 or 15 or 20 years if the American public doesn't trust the system?
Appreciate you coming on,
Thank you.
Rohit. Good luck.
Thank you so much to both of you.
See you again.
Yes.